welcome back to the Magic Morning Wood. And today, as well as me, Clive Davis, and him over there, Ron Scott. Hello, Ron.
Hi.
We have a guest curator in the form of, well, why don't you introduce yourself then?
Hello, I'm Darren Jones, and I've wandered into the wood, which is lovely, by the way. It's my first time here.
It's nice.
It's lovely, yeah. From the outdoor training dojo that's adjacent to it, that we go to for the Kung Fu podcast.
Right.
Bless you.
Yes.
And it's lovely. There's dappled sunlight everywhere.
I believe that's the second appearance of that gag now. Ron.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
It'll never die.
Oh. I don't remember.
It'll only get stronger the more I use it.
I can't remember. Can you pronounce it, Ron? Perfect. Perfect. That is actually the correct ancient pronunciation of it before
Right.
it got simplified.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that
That's
close?
pretty good.
it'll do.
No. It's you know, the effort on the bit of achafuz is always appreciated.
Sounds
Yeah.
very Klingon.
I've been told that before, actually, that Welsh sounds a bit Klingon.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, either
You
that
think
or
Klingon was based on Welsh?
I don't know.
Don't know.
You'd have to ask
I've stumped you.
Gene Roddenberry or whoever it was who actually invented. Because I
Yeah,
don't
there
know.
was I remember seeing like a documentary or something about like specifically, I believe it was. I'm not actually much of a trekker, but I believe it was Star Trek 6, I think, which is called the Undiscovered Country. I think it was that one. And there was like a lot of big Klingon thing, and apparently they brought in like an actual linguist to create Klingon like as an actual language. And
Right.
I remember them going on about. I remember there's a whole thing about like he's supposed to quote like a Shakespeare line in that movie, but the word in the line didn't exist in Klingon. And I was thinking like, well, but you made the fucking language. How can it not exist? You just make one. Right? So
Yeah,
he was
of course
talking
it
about how
isn't,
like,
because it's not the language and it's not the race of people who exist. Right?
yeah. So he's like, but it was really difficult because that word doesn't exist in Klingon. I was like, well, then just make it. You made it. You made the language, right?
Yeah, I was wondering, because I'm guessing it was like that. It was retroactively, like originally Gene Roddenberry was just talk some nonsense, you know, and then after it got huge, they retroactively.
That was actual Welsh, wasn't it? What you said.
It created Klingon, right? Rather than, right, I don't think we can't move ahead with the series until, you know, the backstory's in place and we have a Klingon language, and I can't write another episode. I don't think you would have done that way.
Of course, yeah, but I remember I heard it was around like part 6 where they actually decided
All
to sit
right.
down.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, so I think I heard this.
Yeah, because
the same as Tolkien. Tolkien made all his languages, right? So.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if this is apocryphal, but you can apparently study Klingon at like Bachelor of Arts degree level.
Yeah. Like it's a full like language, like with like and people actually speak it. So
it is that kind of thing, though, isn't it? When you hear that, you can study Klingon. It is the kind of thing that tempts you. I might go and join ISIS after all.
Yeah. Yeah. This it is a sign
of the infidel.
Yeah, the West has become somewhat decadent.
Yeah.
First world problems, it's something like it's like one of those things that you're proud of and ashamed of at the same time. You know what I mean? Like,
right? Yeah.
Like, how many languages do you speak? Oh, I'm actually bilingual. Yeah, I'm English. And what else do you speak?
Yeah, at fan conventions, I can talk fluently all day.
Yeah, and as well culturally, I suppose it's the same. It's one of those things you should be proud of, in so much as look at how much fucking free time we've got, and also kind of ashamed of. Yeah. Anyway, as fascinating as all this is, we're not here to talk Klingon, and as this week's guest curator, Darren, tell us what you've got lined up for us.
Well, as is tradition on the Magic Morning Wood, you know, because although you're discussing films, you know, and I'm talking as an outside observer to this now, I'm big fan, by the way. I hear all of the episodes.
Well, thank you.
What?
That's one.
Yeah, one. I am the listener.
Or Gino get annoyed with you again, Ron, if you say that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Well, Gino listens, but he hasn't really actually said he's a fan. He just kind of listens. So.
Oh no, I'm a fan. See, I'm a fan. So anyway, yeah. So although you apparently discuss films, the reason that I tune in is to hear Clive fully wrong. So this is you know I'm fed by Ron's pain on this podcast.
Well, you must be sorely disappointed then, Darren, because that doesn't happen
Well,
on this show. To my mind,
it's happening today.
Yes, it's happening today. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You've made it come true.
Yes, yes. So, as a little bit of a kind of a not really a joke, actually. It was kind of you know, it's an interesting film to discuss. But also I was kind of, oh, shall I see if I can cause Ron some pain? I thought, oh, I'll pick Calamity of Snakes, and I hadn't seen Calamity of Snakes from 1982-83, Taiwan, because it's kind of a pretty lowbrow Taiwanese, thoroughly exploitation film, but does feature some fairly nasty animal cruelty. And you know, I didn't really want to upset anyone, or particularly yourself, Ron, but I do like picking awkward things to discuss, particularly where you're concerned, when you came and guested on the other one.
Yeah.
And then things escalated a little bit when Clive and I were chatting about it, and then we picked the second of our interesting films to discuss, but with lots of animal cruelty. Also, Cannibal Holocaust.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So it's an accidental animal cruelty special.
Which, I mean, it's up to
accidental?
you.
I don't know about accidental. It seems like it was pretty purposeful.
That did seem like a fairly pathetic attempt at justifying what you've done, Darren, to be fair.
Yeah, I do. I
think you should just own it, right?
Yeah, no, well, the thing is, I would do until if I hadn't just rewatched the films this week.
Right.
And realized what the fucking onslaught of disturbingness both those films are. So actually, I do owe Ron an apology.
Well, and then we
go on.
Oh, I was just saying you should also add that we're also doing a third film as well, right? So
yes,
not just the two, right?
It could have been worse. There could have been 4.
Oh yeah.
Because there's another one, isn't there?
Is there? Well, hang on. Are you going to mention? Where should we mention this? During the films?
Let's go. No, let's go.
Okay, hold that thought then. Put a pin in it, because I'm not quite sure what you're on about there. So now it's up to you, Darren, because you are the guest curator. But I was going to suggest, the way I thought of it was we would do Cannibal Holocaust first, and then follow with the relatively light-hearted animal cruelty of Calamity of Snakes. And then Serpent Warriors. But then it's up to you, Darren, when do you want to talk first?
No, I think that's a good way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's get the really horrible one out the way.
Right. Had you not seen Cannibal Holocaust before, right, Ron?
No, I hadn't. It's sort of been on my list for a long time. Of course, it's infamous, right? So it's notorious. So it's something that I've heard about and had been intending on seeing for a while. So I was glad to finally get a chance to see it. Glad is in air quotes, I guess, right? But at least I had finally had the opportunity to see it. So, but no, I had not seen it before.
Okay, so just to preempt you slightly, Darren, I'm going to give you the floor now, because you're going to introduce it and tell us what it's all about for those who don't know. But I think we would have seen Cannibal Holocaust for the first time around about the same time. I think because it was a video nasty in the UK. One of the more notorious ones. even though I think it was cut on video in the UK when it was originally released, but it had a particularly horrendous looking cover, right? Like a painted cover of someone chowing down on some intestines, which was exactly the kind of thing that people who thought video nasties would be, right? Wall to wall, that. And Cannibal Holocaust being one of the handful that kind of lives up to the phrase video nasty, I think. But and I think you would have got, we kind of went to the same bootlegging services, and you would have arrived in the capital of London before me, a few years before me. I was still back in Wales. So I think you obtained a copy of Cannibal Holocaust first, which was, of course, then eagerly borrowed by myself, or we might have even watched together, I can't remember, because, of course, we had both wanted to see it for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages, and then finally got the chance. So,
so correct me if I'm wrong. It was banned in the UK for a while, right?
Until quite recently, really. I think.
Yeah, into the 2000s, I think is when.
So Darren, can you? I don't know if I'm incriminating you, but do you want to talk about how you obtained a copy in the first place?
Yeah, I went to a shop that did lots of memorabilia and magazines and stuff, and also a massive trade in under-the-counter video nasties and porn.
Porn would have been illegal as well.
Right.
Yeah, hardcore. You couldn't buy hardcore. Well,
by and large.
Yeah.
Is it still hardcore? Is it still illegal in Wales?
In the UK? No, it's not. But it's I don't know. Darren could probably speak to this more than me, but I still get the feeling it's not. You can get hardcore, obviously, but it's not. There's still a lot of things you can't do, right?
Yeah, I think it's heavily regulated, and this is. I mean, it's kind of it's all irrelevant now with the advent of, the internet as it is now.
Yeah.
But back in the late 90s, early 2000s, then they did start to grant certificates to hardcore porn, but it seemed that there was still a lot of restrictions on what could be done.
Very vanilla. You can't do the stuff that you do here in Japan, for example. But then on the other hand, things aren't pixelated. Every place has their own weird standards.
Hang-ups.
Yeah, but I think I other than something vintage, like if you wanted a copy of The Devil in Miss Jones or whatever, and wanted to go and buy a nice special edition DVD of it, then I don't think anyone buys DVDs of porn anymore.
Right.
I think you just get it off the internet these days, don't you?
Just one more thing before we move on. So I was curious about this because you can see Cannibal Holocaust in the UK now. There is an UK Blu-ray, and I think you have the UK Blu-ray, right,
Darren? Yes, I do.
So
it's cut.
Right, I was going to say, because I'm guessing the animal cruelty, which we'll get to, that's probably still just full out illegal, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I was an idiot and I bought the special edition Blu-ray, then realized it was cut and then never watched it.
Right.
So I think I've got the Blue Underground. I imported the Blue Underground.
Right, because you can't even see the film Cockfighter in the UK still, as far as I understand, because there's cockfighting. So that's
is that the animal cruelty one or the porn one?
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
tell us more
or
about
both.
tell us more about this non-animal cruelty cockfighter that you're such an expert on, Ron.
Well, there is actually, odd enough, there is a hardcore kung fu film that I think me and Darren are going to talk about one day, called Kung Fu Cockfighter, in which someone does wield their member as a weapon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're welcome to come on.
Come on down.
Ron. That's great.
Seeing as you're the expert.
Before we get a little more into this film, Darren, you didn't really get a chance to introduce yourself a little bit. Do you want to talk about how you and Clive know each other?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So Clive and I, and thank you for the shout out. Clive will very rarely and occasionally give me a shout out on the Magic Morningwood, because it's Clive and I that kind of, along with some other friends of Clive's as well, kind of discovered the kind of exploitation, horror, extreme horror exploitation, and kung fu end of the kind of cinema spectrum together. You know, we ended up we met in college in the mid 90s back in Wales, and yeah, we used to frequent all of the video rental shops, just trawling for anything that either looked interesting or that we read about. You know,
Yes.
And, you know,
So this would have come
often
up when we mentioned Edge of Hell, Rock and Roll Nightmare, right? That would have been
Right.
an early discovery of ours together.
Yeah. So we would regularly stay up all night, get our 7 films for a £5 from the video shop, and then just watch them all in an evening, do the running order, argue over the running order.
Yeah, and I actually only end up seeing about 2 of them because we spent hours discussing. But we had fun. We enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. So we kind of, I suppose you could say, we kind of grew up. Part of our education in you know, cinema, particularly the horror exploitation and kung fu end of the spectrum, we kind of, you know, we kind of went to that university together back in the 90s, back home in Wales.
Okay. And so the two of you just mentioned that you were having desperate to see Cannibal Holocaust for a long time before you'd seen it.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you had heard about it?
I think probably something like Nightmare Movies by Kim Newman, or possibly Dark Side magazine, would have been where I'd have heard of it.
Yes.
Is that right, Clive?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So Dark Side magazine was, I mean, in retrospect, I mean, it might even still be going, I don't know, but was an interesting magazine in so much it was a horror film magazine. But unlike Fangoria, for example, it seemed a lot more obsessed, because it was from the UK, I suppose. It was a lot more obsessed with films from the 70s and the 80s that were still difficult to see in the UK. Many that ended up on the Video Nasties list. But we would make fun of Dark Side magazine as well, because we were snotty little assholes. And there was a certain amount to be made fun of it. For instance, editor Alan Bryce's, anyway, people who know, people who don't. But the thing is, in a way, it's weird to have a, because it wasn't a fanzine, it was like a proper magazine you'd find on newsstands that, you know, had pages and pages and pages devoted to obscure Italian gore films. So it's actually kind of special in retrospect, even though it wasn't the best magazine in a, you know, journalistic standards and all that. But yeah, I think that's where we would have discovered Cannibal.
Yeah, I've never thought about it that way before, actually. That's a really good point, in fact. I mean, I even remember early on in our friendship, we had, one of us had a copy of Dark Side magazine.
Yeah.
And I remember both of us discovering Cat 3 Hong Kong Horror.
Yes.
By Dark Side magazine. What the fuck is this stuff?
Exactly. And there were, you know, and again, on the newsstand, right? You had talking about Untold Story and Man Behind the Sun, and had fairly gory pictures and images. So it was kind of important magazine in its way.
Yeah. So I mean, I had a copy of Nightmare Movies, which was very, very useful to me, and I kind of credit Nightmare Movies with, you know, my love of non-mainstream horror. I think that was the main springboard, and secondary to that, absolutely, is Dark Side, because, you know, it just gave us such a springboard to go and kind of jump off from. Yeah. You know, and
being one of the main Video Nasties as well, it was right at the top of the list.
And again, you know, at the time we were teenagers, and, you know, when teenagers get interested in gore, you know, that's all they're interested in.
Right.
You want the most extreme
thing. Exactly. Yeah. And the Cannibal Holocaust did not disappoint in that regard.
This is true to this day, actually.
Do you remember your initial You didn't see it together the first time? You saw it just around the same time, though?
I think
Darren would have seen it before me because he would have. I think you had.
Right.
Yeah. So I would be. So I was in London. So Clive and I met in college, and then I was the year above Clive. So I spent probably 2 years in London before Clive got to London.
Right.
And I would have got a copy because that would have been one of the first that I got, because I would have. I'm pretty sure I ordered that.
And then when you came back to visit, you would have gone with you. And
Right. And so do you both of you remember your initial reactions to this movie first time you saw it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, and still do, actually. It's one of those films I from the get-go, I think I kind of I felt as if I got it. Like I got it, like, because it's not just, we'll get into this, but it's not just a shocking gore movie. It's kind of quite a multi-layered kind of critique of itself in a way. And I think that comes through like in a very pretentious way. It just it comes out. It's very easy to decode in a way without you realizing that was, it's a kind of complex piece of work, whether by accident or design, I don't know. But I think it's kind of a classic. I still think it's a classic.
Yeah, I agree with Clive. And yeah, I mean, I remember being shocked. Obviously, the stuff in Cannibal Holocaust is not duplicated easily, and that's for good reason. And it's it's some of the most extreme stuff you can see, or at least we could see back at the time. And but at the same time, we're not watching some Joe D'Amato, throw a bucket of cow guts and corn syrup at the naked lady gore film. It's it's actually got something to say. It's got a message, and just the structure of the film as well is very clever. And you only have to watch 20% of the popular entries from the horror genre in modern times to see Cannibal Holocaust's dirty footprints coming before it, my opinion.
So before we get into Darren giving us a bit of a rundown of the story briefly, so people who don't know what it is, I am kind of curious if you can give us a bit of a taster on as to what did you make of Cannibal Holocaust, being your first viewing of it?
I mean, I got all of what you were saying there, and I think it was pretty, as you said, layered and subtle in its kind of message, and it was kind of all. I mean, sounds like a bit of a cliche, but to say it's almost more relevant today than it was then in terms of the media and stuff like that. There's a lot of it's still very relevant, and I think it was competently done, and I thought that it was really interesting and innovative about some of the ways that he shot, and he decided to mix the use of the found footage. I mean, it was, I don't know, I don't know, you guys are better at history than I am, but it must be one of the first kind of found footage type movies, right? So I mean, that in itself, it's notable for its innovation in terms of the and the fact that it was able to mix the both together and make it seem like a proper studio movie plus found footage kind of, which was, I thought was quite interesting. That it was really well done. I guess the only problem is that the animal cruelty tends to overshadow what is generally like a fairly decent movie, and that it's sort of like you sort of forget about all the good stuff about it because you're like, oh well, they're just killing all these animals, right? So it's almost like so it's unfortunate that they did that and didn't decide to try to do more practical effects instead. So I don't know if it would have taken away or reduced the movie at all if they had done more effects rather than real animal cruelty, or and if it would have ultimately been a forgettable movie. I can't really say. I'm a little curious about that, about what you guys think about that. If if it would have changed the movie.
Because it is tied up in its notoriety, isn't it? So it's,
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I'm wondering if it would have been just forgotten had it been just a regular practical effects movie. So I don't know.
Was it what you were expecting?
No, I didn't know it was a found footage movie. I thought it was like a proper, just a proper movie in the jungle. I didn't know that they had made that. So that effect of it, that element of it was a bit of a surprise, and seeing how like movies like Blair Witch and all the Paranormal Activity and all the found footage boom basically can trace their roots back to this movie, right, kind of thing, right? So and so that was cool to see. So I enjoyed that, and I was able to finally see why the movie is so notorious and stuff, and I thought the performances were good and the script was fine. I thought it was it felt very kind of very visceral a lot of the times. It really felt like you were kind of there with those people. So which is the effect. So I thought it was very effective. In what it did. It was just it's unfortunate that it had to that they had to kill animals to do it, right? So so I think I mean, and I don't want to. I know Darren seems to think I'm a thin-skinned snowflake, but
I didn't say snowflake. Clive said snowflake before we were on air.
But I mean, and of course, I love animals. I'm not going to say certainly not going to condone animal cruelty or, but it was like, I mean, if you think about the whole movie, what are the images that stay with you? It's like chopping that turtle's head off. Like that's the image that sticks with you. And I'm not sure if it would have been as like striking for me or anybody had it not been for the real animal killing.
I think they should have sent the filmmakers into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films, and that would have sorted that lot out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think, I mean, Deodato, the director, Ruggero Deodato's theory on including the animal cruelty, because that is obviously a choice. That's a choice he made. He could easily have filmed that without the animal cruelty.
Yeah, and he was definitely. I assume he was kind of caught up in his idea of making it feel really real, and that the whole idea, I guess, where he paid the actors to disappear for a year. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah.
The whole thing is that the actors were supposed to disappear for a year.
Yeah.
Which is similar to like some of the marketing campaigns of like the found footage ones in later years, right? Which is like the trying to make it feel really real, and tying in websites and nowadays and stuff like that. So it's I'm curious about that, the whole idea. Like I read that he asked the actors to disappear, and what would that even mean though? Like what does that mean to disappear for a year? Like,
well, I think it was more less disappear for a year, more don't do press for this film or any other film. So don't appear in media, I think is probably.
So we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves. What's the film about? Let's get that out of the way, just in case no one knows.
Yes. So what the film is about is it's framed around the journey of this Professor Monroe, who is an anthropologist who has come upon this story of a fairly famous documentary film crew who are well known for making candid and extreme Mondo type documentaries, and they've disappeared in the jungle. So he goes looking for the lost film crew. He has some adventures in the jungle. Comes across
in the Amazon, right? Just to
in the Amazon. My apologies. Yeah, in the Amazon. He comes across the tribes, the so-called cannibal tribes, who they were looking for. Locates the film from the cannibal tribes, and then the film shifts its emphasis to watching the footage that's framed around this argument that Professor Monroe is having with the I guess it's the TV company, although I didn't quite get that, or the film company. I didn't quite.
Yeah, I think it's the people who are planning to broadcast it, right? Whether because it seems to be on. It seems like they've already broadcast, because you see people watching it through shop windows. They've already broadcast like the introductory episode. Maybe it's like a 2-parter or something. They're talking about this talented film crew who went missing, and next week we'll be bringing you the actual footage that they captured in the jungle. Professor Monroe, played by Robert Kerman, who was AKA R. Bowler in hardcore films. He was a porn actor prior to this and just after it as well for a while. He's most famous, I suppose, for being the only guy who actually gets to fuck Bambi Woods in Debbie Does Dallas. Despite the title, she doesn't do Dallas. She only does Robert Kerman. So he has that accolade in the original Debbie Does Dallas.
He fucked Debbie.
He did.
Yes. Anyway, and then the kind of emphasis shifts in between watching the footage. It shifts to this dialogue between Professor Monroe and the film company or the TV company, which is Professor Monroe is of the opinion, because of the extreme shit that the film crew got up to, the extremely shady methods they used to get their footage, that the film should not be broadcast and in fact should be destroyed. And then it becomes this kind of, or rather in between this extreme footage, there's this argument, there's this debate between, the ethics of Mondo documentary film production and everything.
So they get up to all sorts of things which kind of escalate. And as we said, they also kill lots of animals to eat, and we'll get onto the animal cruelty thing in a bit more detail. But and also, yes, they how does it start? They like wound one villager, they shoot a pig, and it escalates. They burn down a village, they rape a girl, which in turn ends up with her being ceremonially kind of
impaled.
Impaled on a stake, which is the iconic image of Cannibal Holocaust, and still looks astonishingly realistic, right? Like, holy fuck.
Well, in fact, all of the special effects in this look really good, really realistic.
Yes, by someone who you will never have heard of as well, right? Aldo Gaspari, like, you expect it's going to be a name, it's going to be like a Sergio Stivaletti or a Bob Keane or a whatever. But no one's ever heard of Aldo Gaspari, I don't think. But his work here is excellent. I mean, it's...
it's aside from a few, mannequin-y looking heads, it all looks really real. And for Italy in 1980, if you compare that to some, to a contemporary film, something like The Beyond, Lucio Fulci's Beyond, or anything Dario Argento was doing back then, then all of those Italian gore films, look kind of fake. It's bright red blood, not dark red blood, and it all looks a bit rubbery, or but this is just looks like meat.
Yeah, it's grim and nasty. And of course the cameras, spoilers by the way, just in case anyone hasn't seen that Holocaust, but yes, and of course the cameras end up capturing their own demise at the hands of these cannibals, and that's kind of it in a nutshell, right? So yeah, where do we want to start with this one? So many elements to discuss. So animal cruelty then, I guess that's the big one that looms large over this. So yes, as we mentioned, still cut for that in the UK and maybe other territories, I don't know. And I suppose upsetting to many. And like you said, Ron, and like Ruggero Deodato and some of the other people have said as well, like in retrospect, maybe we wouldn't have done it because it's a fairly powerful, strong bit of exploitation anyway, right?
Right.
they say they were, and the thing is, I don't know who to believe as well. I don't know if Ruggero Deodato is trustworthy or any of the other people. No one wants to fess up, right? Everyone seems to say, "Oh, I wasn't there when that happened," or the producer insisted on it, or But I think, I mean, I'll get my opinion out the way. I found it slightly less problematic this time watching it. I mean, as far as I can tell, again, this could be bullshit, but it seems like it would mostly be true. It seems like most of the things they kill are stuff that would have been killed anyway for food. Like, they eat the rat, they eat the turtle, obviously they eat the pig, they would have shot the pig to eat.
And the monkey?
The monkey, they ate monkeys, the Indios ate monkeys, monkey brains, as you see.
Well, apparently, I read that after they killed the animals, the crew ate all the animals. So, I mean, it wasn't like they were wasted. Yeah. It wasn't that they were killed and then just the carcass was tossed. At least they were used.
Right. So there's a slight amount of hypocrisy here as well, isn't there? Because none of us are vegetarians or vegans, and we do eat things. And I'm not sure what makes one animal more, you can eat one, not another. I suppose the only thing is it's a bit lingering, maybe. Like, for instance, the turtle is clearly still moving about.
Yeah, I think it was like the jerk of the turtle's like leg as they behead it is like, because it isn't completely beheaded, and like you could see like the turtle's like, holy fuck, what the hell is happening, right? Like you can just see what the turtle's thinking at that time. It's like, it's. Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that's like unusual. I mean, some things do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've eaten turtle and very delicious it was too. And, I've gone to restaurants where they boil seafood alive in front of you,
Yeah, right in front of you, yeah.
So, I don't know, whereas I'm not saying it didn't disturb, I mean, there is something deserved, you see the kind of rat whining, it's, that's not nice, and the turtle moving about, and you think, oh, that's not nice, and that poor little monkey, cute little monkey had his hair. But the thing is, I mean, there's no way around. I think if you kill things, it's horrible. That's kind of it, right? So I don't know. This time, I kind of I mean, it didn't really strike me as offensive beyond. I don't want to look at that. If you see what I mean, like,
right? Yeah. From
a point of view of an aesthetic point of view, I guess, rather than a moral quandary. I don't know what either of you feel about that.
Yeah, I think yes, I agree with you, and yes, they consumed everything they killed, but I suppose it's the intent, isn't it? It's the director's intent in filming that, and in filming that in its detail, and how lingering the shots are. So his intent works a treat, because most of the animal cruelty stuff in this is not necessarily, oh, we're killing for food, or we're the arsehole film crew, and we just need to eat. It's, when they cut the turtle's head off, they're fucking about with the turtle's head while it's still snapping.
Yeah.
In a really kind of jokey, flippant kind of way. They're not killing any of these animals particularly humanely, which would be a choice. And, I'm guessing the director's reason for doing that is to portray these this film crew as cruel and as flippant and as just horrible people.
Well, yes and no, I think, and this brings us to one of the reasons why the film works, I think, so one of the things it's I suppose one of the main things it's critiquing, as well as kind of anthropologists fucking about in places that they shouldn't, and stuff like that, and how much they impact the places that they go into, etc., is it's a direct critique of the Mondo film as well, right, which would have been 16 years old or something at this, well, maybe even older, you could argue, but proper Mondo in the Mondo Cane style, and particularly the Italians made a lot of them. You know, and so it's critiquing, and part of that was there's always a certain amount of animal cruelty in those films, right? There's always like, look here, look what they do in this country, isn't it horrible what these horrible people over there do to these cute little animals or whatever. But of course, it's all for the thrill of the audiences around the world, right? It's like that mixture of, oh, that's horrible, that's this thing, and you know, show me more. I hope in the sequel, you know, you see a monkey sliced in half with a bandsaw or something, or you know. So yes, I agree with you. It's put in there to shock, and it's part of the message of the film. Then. But at the same time, it's being what it's critiquing itself, right? Because I think it knows that, oh, if we put extra animal cruelty in this, you know, we can sell this to certain territories in the Far East, for example. I mean, you know, massive hit in Japan, for example. Like all those Mondo things were fucking huge here. So there's that as well. So that I think that starts to get into the complexity of why this film is so clever in a way, right, and self-reflective and complicit in its own crimes.
Yeah, I think that's a good way, really good way to describe that. Yeah, it's critiquing the Mondo industry whilst itself being a large part of it, or it becomes a large part of it. You know. Yes.
Yeah. I think you're not big on your Mondo films, Ron. I know this because I lent you the book Killing for Culture, and it's been sat in your toilet for...
No, it's right there.
Oh, is it? Are you actually reading it? Because it was in your toilet.
Yeah. Little by little, yeah.
Okay. So I'm guessing the fact that you're not racing through it, that it's not necessarily something that fascinates you too much.
That's not it. It's just that I just have been busy with other stuff. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, but yeah, I will get to it for sure.
Okay. But was that element of it then? Was that speaking to you? You know, because you haven't watched so many Mondo films and stuff, but that was, you were getting all that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. I have as much experience with the historical significance of like historically where this took place and what it was referring to and the references and stuff like that. So, yeah. But I mean, I definitely got that it came out of a culture, and it was trying to do something that I think I got the impression, at least from it, that it was doing something that other people were doing, but trying to do it more, if that makes sense. You know, like it was trying to do something that had already been established as a thing, but doing more of it to try to make it stand itself, to make itself stand out.
Right. The reason I bring it up is just because I knew you weren't overly familiar. I thought you would be a good person to ask whether, and it seems as if it has, whether that lands, like, because I'm thinking of people who haven't seen this film before, where and maybe haven't seen the other films, that still lands as like, oh, this is a trope that they're kind of critiquing, or that comes through, right?
Or at the very least, it's being used as sort of like to mirror their treatment of the villagers, of the tribesmen, right? Which is like, I mean, basically for them, they're also just animals, right? And so the fact that they treat the animals like this sort of more justifies why they treat the cannibals that way as well, right? So because it's sort of like, you know, they're not really anthropologists, they're just sort of, it's sort of in a way, I guess, a critique of, like, you know, Western civilization and how it treats the other cultures that are, you know, quote unquote, less civilized, right? You know, which is treating them like animals, right? So.
Right. Or yes, objectifying them.
But of course, in itself, you know, this being a critique of the Mondo filmmaker and their ethics, and the genre as a whole, and even, you know, what was anthropology in the 60s and 70s, I guess. You know, and you know, it's in the script as well. It's in the dialogue. You know, somewhere in the dialogue, there's a line that's something like, these people are savages.
Mhm.
And you have to understand that their culture is savage, primitive,
Yes. Yeah.
which is no longer, which are no longer terms that are used in anthropology.
No.
And
and
probably even weren't back then.
When they shoot
Yeah.
the pig and burn the village down as well, there's like a very funny kind of darkly comic, obviously, but there's a bit where he's speaking to camera and he's saying, it's survival of the fittest. Stuff like this happens all the time in the jungle. No, it fucking didn't before you.
Yeah.
But so you've got that element of it, and it's
Yes.
the film is successful at highlighting that. However, the film is also complicit in reducing these tribes, and it's the names. I haven't looked into this in great detail, but they're using the names of 2 actual tribes.
Yes.
Which are not cannibalistic tribes.
No.
And don't act, and their culture is nothing like it's portrayed in the film.
Yeah, they're not actually being portrayed correctly. Right? So,
exactly. So at the same time as Deodato is giving us this savage critique and very effective critique of Mondo filmmakers and by extension historical anthropologists, he's actually perpetuating this culture of misrepresentation.
Right. Yeah. So he is actually, he himself are those documentary filmmakers, right? So he's doing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, was he doing it consciously or unconsciously? So that's the question, I guess, right? So yeah.
He strikes me as a smart fellow, and I'm thinking kind of maybe a bit of both, right? Like I said, I think he is also delivering because he does deliver a balls out fucking exciting exploitation film. And the cannibals are en masse. Yeah, I mean, as much as we kind of sympathize them to a certain degree, and when vengeance is meted out, we are kind of not on their side necessarily, but not overly sympathetic. But at the same time, they are they are just a menace, a lumpen, savage menace, right? They're not given any real agency, or no particular one has a personality or anything. Right? They're just eating, killing, savage machines, right? In the world of this film. So yeah, it definitely has its cake and eats it, right? This film. Which I always say is, why the fuck would you buy a cake if you're not going to eat it? But yeah.
Of course, they have their human flesh and eat it too, I guess, rather than.
Yeah. Well, the other thing as well, I suppose, which feeds into that. So we were talking about the girl impaled on, and all that. I mean, obviously they didn't actually kill anyone. Let's get that clear, because that was the other early scandal. Was Ruggiero Deodato was accused of actually killing people for his film, blah 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 blah, and he had to go to court and he had to prove that the actors were still alive and all that.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing where he had told the actors to disappear, but then they had to find them in order to prove that they weren't dead. Which is, the whole thing was very strange. It was and even the actors themselves didn't know if it was a snuff film or a real film. You know what I mean? So
right, yeah. So, but to that as well, so we were talking about the exploitation of the people in the film as well, right? I mean, there are certain stories about, for instance, when they were burning that hut, and there's the people are in a burning hut, and they were trying to escape every now and again, and they were kind of being herded back, and so I'm not sure if there was a health and safety.
Oh, I doubt that. I doubt it.
No.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that in retrospect, the filmmakers say, it was fine, we were, but I think there was definitely a recklessness in the making of this film, a very much a first world film crew goes into the jungle and takes advantage of, people in the third world. That recklessness is what got this film made, right?
Right.
But that is also what they're critiquing. So yeah, so it's all wrapped up. Like I said, in a way though, it's because I think because it is what it's critiquing at the same time. They didn't even have to go to the they didn't even have to really go that far to try and seed it into the script or anything like that. I think it's just implicit in the act of making the film. So I think that's kind of what makes it a classic in a way as well. Is it's I don't know, it's more than the film itself. It represents something almost in spite of itself. Like, so it's almost beyond criticism in that way. I think what I mean is the resulting film is just it's just, here we go, just poof, there you go. Take a look at that, and it speaks volumes about so many things that, I mean, you could talk about it for hours. Really, I think this film deconstruct so many things about it.
Yeah. What's surprising as well, and this has only just sort of occurred to me, is, you know, obviously there were cannibal films. There was a cannibal subgenre before Cannibal Holocaust.
This is in that lineage.
But what surprises me actually is this being pretty much the most extreme example. After this came out, you know, there was a wave of copycats.
Yeah.
So, you know, in particular, something like Cannibal Ferox came after by not as good a director, and you know, someone known for just ripping off whatever the zeitgeist was, you know, in the horror subgenre at the time. What surprises me actually is that no one topped it in terms of, oh, they killed a turtle in that film, let's kill 5 alligators or whatever the hell it is. No one ever really kind of, you know, everyone, you know, you have that famous scene in particular Cannibal Ferox, where you've got the woman suspended from her breasts. They kind of, I can't remember, they hang her up from her breasts on these hooks.
Yeah,
really
hooks,
yeah. And you know, they all tried to kind of top it on the kind of, you know, special effects score sticks, but no one ever really went down the kind of that worked for Cannibal Holocaust. Let's go and kill, you know, let's go and kill a pen full of pigs, or let's go and kill, you know, a gorilla or whatever, you know.
Well, I think it's the spice in this film, is it, in a way, because we almost forgot to mention that, there's a whole lot of other fake, but, you know, there's rape and beatings and gore and someone getting a fetus ripped out. And so it's almost like it's spicing that stuff up with this real animal cruelty is what makes the whole thing so potent, isn't it? So I'm not sure if it works if you just made an animal cruelty film. I'm not quite sure how much box office that would do.
No, but I mean, you know, the other films that come after it in the same subgenre don't tend to use that level of spicing. You know, they don't tend to use the same seasoning. Yeah,
I'm thinking this film must have felt, because it still feels like it now, but when it came out 40 years ago, it must have felt a little bit like, okay, you've just stepped over the line there, my boy. Why don't you, you know, reel it in a little bit? And you're right. Like, I suppose the big one that tried to top this would have been Cannibal Ferox. And you're right. They only go for it in terms of the obvious gore set pieces with cocks being cut off and hanging up by the breasts and stuff. But the other stuff is less grisly.
Well, they cut off the cock in this one too, though.
Yes, but they dwell on it even more, because Cannibal Ferox isn't a found footage film. So there's this film where they have the camera moving about and you only half glimpse things and stuff like that. In Ferox, they just dwell on shit. Dwell on the gore, right? Because they're not trying to sell it as a real thing that happened.
Yeah, and I guess
nowhere near as good a film.
No, and I guess, of course, you know, the other reason that people may not have followed down the same line is all the shit that Deodato got into after he made
the legal problems. He
was in court. You know, he had to demonstrate that he hadn't killed anyone, and you know, he actually got a fine, didn't he? He was fined for the animal stuff in the film.
Yeah.
So you know, that's a lot of trouble for you know. I'm sure it helped sales, but that's a lot of hassle for a production company to have to go through every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I would like to give this more room, really, but unfortunately, we are strapped for time a little bit today. So,
also, can I just mention one more thing?
Well, I was just about to say, if anyone's got any other things to mention, do so now or forever hold your peace.
Darren, you're saying something?
I just wanted to mention something we haven't mentioned yet that I think is an integral part of the film is soundtrack.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Soundtrack on Cannibal Holocaust, one of my favorite film soundtracks of all time.
Yes, Riz Ortolani, right?
Yeah. The main theme and the incidental music, this kind of, these beeps and these kind of, yeah. Well, it's the beeps and it's the kind of Friday the 13th kind of sound, isn't it? As well, right. It's those kind of.
I remember actually because my wife is also very familiar with Cannibal Holocaust, and it's something that comes up a lot, oddly enough, in our conversation. I remember when we did sit down to eat spawn, which is turtle, on our, I can't remember, 15th or 10th anniversary or something. We decided to go and eat turtle. I think when they brought it to the table, we both started going, because that, if memory serves, I think that is what plays during that scene as well, isn't it? Whenever any animal cruelty that happens, they do that music. So
yeah, but it's really effective.
Yeah, and then there's like they go like the full strings and everything, the full string orchestra at other points as well.
Oh yes, great.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful score. Yeah, because it's such a juxtaposition to what's happening on screen.
Yeah.
Did you play that at your wedding, Darren? Is that right?
No.
I'm getting you confused with someone else. Someone wanted the Cannibal Holocaust theme.
Would have been amazing.
Yeah.
I'd have loved that.
Well, the thing
Cannibal Holocaust themed wedding.
Yeah.
If you didn't know what it was, and if you just heard that, you'd think, "Oh, what a nice, romantic, lovely piece of love."
Mm-hmm. You could walk down the aisle to Riz Ortolani's Cannibal Holocaust thing.
Yeah. But you never come back.
Yeah. Ceremonially kill a monkey.
So I've got shitloads of other things as well, actually, but nothing too pertinent. So in the interest of time, we will move on. Are we all done, gents, on Cannibal Holocaust?
Yeah, I think you guys said a lot more, lot better than I can, because I think you have a lot more of the historical significance and situationing of the movie. So,
do you think you'd be watching it again, Ron?
Yeah, I'd see it again. I think I was sort of expecting the animal cruelty when I saw it, but I didn't know when it was coming or what it was supposed to look, what it was going to look like. So it was still quite shocking when, okay, really? So that's what they're doing, right? So I think now that I know what it is and when to expect it, and that I can sort of look at other stuff rather than just looking at, just being like kind of like taken back by the shock value, right? So
it is definitely a film that does stand up to repeated viewings, and God knows,
I think so.
I've seen this now, and I could see it again and again. There's a very rich work, really. we now put the heavy animal cruelty behind us, and we jauntily skip along to a much more family-friendly style of animal cruelty.
Less quality animal cruelty now to the quantity of animal cruelty.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you're talking in terms of, there's a whole load more in a way, but oddly, well, we'll talk about whether it's less offensive or not. But
yes.
So Darren, what have you got cooked up for us? What's going on now?
Yes, so now we are going to go over to 1983's Taiwanese production, Calamity of Snakes.
I feel it would be unfair of me to only correct Ron in these issues, so I'm going to
carry on,
you as well. It's 1982.
Okay, that's fine. See how I dealt with that, Ron? Okay, that's fine.
A masterclass. Yeah, none of this. David, I saw you. None of that.
That's how you deal with bullies.
Right. Okay, sure.
Take it. Yeah, fine. Bye. That's it. It's done. See? Lesson for you there.
Yeah, I still don't get it, but that's okay.
Yeah, anyway, yes. So William Chung Kay's Calamity of Snakes, made in 1982, released in 83. Shut up, Clive.
Oh, not so confident now, are we?
It's fine. Again, it's kind of it's not got quite the kind of the name or the notoriety of Cannibal Holocaust, but it is known amongst fans for the same kind of reason.
There's no extended edition 3-disc Blu-ray of Calamity of Snakes, right? We had to end up watching it. Well, I think me and Ron both. I think you might have a copy, Darren, but me and Ron ended up watching it online, right?
Yeah, same. Yeah, I ended up watching the same copy because I've got it on VHS.
Well, it's funny. The version it's on Daily Motion, listeners, if you want to see it, and which is slightly better than the quality on YouTube. But it's exactly the same copy that I first saw when I first arrived in Japan and found it in a Japanese video store, dubbed into English and subtitled into Japanese. That is the version that everyone's watching in English, at least, is widespread from the Japanese VHS. Yeah.
I need to go and have a look at my VHS. I just didn't manage to hook up my machine.
Right.
I need to go and have a look at my VHS because maybe my memory is flawed, but I was convinced I watched the subtitled version.
Oh, okay. All right.
When I first saw it, but my memory could very well be flawed on that.
Well, it could have been just subtitled in Japanese, and you wouldn't have known the difference back then.
Oh, of course, yeah. So yes, so disaster movie territory is where we are here. It's kind of somewhere,
and kind of revenge.
Yeah, it's a kind of it's a revenge, towering inferno flavored snake nature fights back.
If the Towering Inferno was mad at you and wanted to burn you on purpose.
Yes.
And was a snake.
And was a snake.
Isn't working.
Yeah. Well, in both films, the fire department do play quite a large, significant role for some fucking reason.
In their space suits.
That's it.
But to be fair, if you dial emergency services and say snakes, I'm not quite sure who they're supposed to send, really.
Animal control.
An ambulance?
I don't think Dr. Doolittle, maybe. But I don't think every town has an animal control department. Right? I mean, my village back at home didn't even have a police station. The police had to come from the next village over. So, I guess the fire brigade would turn up. They turn up for everything, don't they?
Yeah, maybe it's because they've got axes.
Yeah, or they rescue cats from trees and things.
Yeah, but that's because they've got ladders.
This is true. Snakes and ladders. Snakes and ladders. That's the connection.
There we go.
Snakes on a plane.
Now we know.
They're on a plane.
Yes. So anyway, so we've got an unscrupulous property developer who is going to build a big high-rise apartment block, but he doesn't want to spend too much money on materials or making buildings safe.
No, to quote him, in fact, he says, "I am at peace when my wallet is full." So we know where he's coming from.
And he wants to be at peace.
He does. Yeah.
Yes. So he hires. So he has this architect, and I didn't actually. So I think that's Cao Yen, isn't it?
No, Cao Yen is the property developer.
Oh, he's the property developer.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that's Tsai Young Peng, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't write down. The only names I wrote down were Cao Yen because he's and Wei Ping Ao, because those are the only two people I know. Yeah. Wei Ping Ao is his henchman who is most famous. Everyone's seen him. He's the camp gangster in Way of the Dragon, isn't he? And he's in a million other things. Yeah. And he's got that rubbery face, and he's very much the comic relief here, isn't he? Like he drops a rock on his foot and gets slapped for touching someone's ass, and jumps into the factory.
Is that the one that had like his hair when he got surprised his hair went out and he jumped really high and landed in like the girl's arms, and that one. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So anyway, there's this architect who's pushing back against the property developer. His job to design the building and make sure the construction goes ahead. And he wants a quality job, and he's got ethics. But the property developer isn't having it, and he's going to cut corners wherever he finds. And all of a sudden, on the construction site, they discover this massive pit full of snakes.
Yeah.
And there's hundreds of snakes in there.
Yeah.
And rather than call the fire department to sort a pit of snakes out, Clive.
Yes.
The fire department.
Yeah.
Maybe they use their ladders to go down the pit.
Yeah. Making sense.
The developer decides to cut corners and takes a JCB, or Jack Cody Bow, as we'd have called it back in Wales, but a digger from the construction site, and decides to kill all the snakes with his men with shovels and the digger in the pit, basically mashing these real snakes into mincemeat.
For ages. Like this scene has gone for quite a while. Hacking, thwacking, and that was just me jacking off at home. Mashing snakes to bits. It's quite the thing, isn't it? It's if you hate snakes, I mean, this is the film for you, right? I mean, and that's just the beginning of it, really.
That's the first 5 minutes. Meanwhile, the developer's wife keeps having nightmares about snakes. So that's a little kind of subplot in that, isn't it? Who comes to the construction site, says, no, don't kill all the snakes. They kill all the snakes anyway.
Yeah.
Then over the course of the construction, and then eventually the completion of this project, snakes invade for revenge and kill a number of people.
And the big cumulative kind of set piece is they throw a party for the new residents who've moved into this complex, complete with disco. There's a disco going on in the foyer, I guess. And the snakes attack en masse, including this, the one non-real snake is this huge boa constrictor puppet thing, which does some sort of weird martial arts, snake martial arts or something.
It's a kung fu snake.
Yeah, choreographed by Robert Tai.
Yeah.
By the way, the action choreography.
So it must be a kung fu snake.
Yeah. That's kind of the plot, really. Snakes take their revenge on humanity, and lots of very brave actors indeed roll around in loads of snakes, covered in snakes. I mean, there's snakes. It's got to be thousands of snakes in this film, right? Literally thousands of snakes. Oh, hang on, I've turned on my fucking... You carry on.
Yeah. Yeah, and it mind boggles, doesn't it, at the sheer quantity of snakes.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah.
How do you get that many snakes?
Yeah, I was more than the movie itself. I was really like sort of found myself thinking a lot about like the logistics of how they did this this movie. Clive is holding something up to the camera.
That's a
one
fucking
hold
cobra.
down, can't see.
That's a
What is
fucking
that?
cobra.
That's a little baby cobra. That's baby cobra wine. That is.
Wow.
And you've killed it.
Well, I didn't.
There's some animal cruelty for you.
I bought it like that. My hands are clean.
Oh, I see. You're complicit.
Yeah. Sorry, the listeners aren't going to get any of that, are they?
No. That's just for you two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was really concerned, like not concerned, but like I found myself thinking a lot about like where do they keep all these snakes when they were filming? Like who was looking after them? Like how do they feed them all? Like what do they do with them? Like after they're done with them, the ones that were still alive, and it's like where do they buy them all? Like do they go to the pets and like go to every pet store in all of Taiwan and get me every snake you can find? Like it was, or do they have like a snake distributor or something? Like it was. I was really curious about the logistics of this movie.
Yeah, because there's literally an Arctic truck full of snakes in this film.
Yeah.
Literally that quantity of snakes.
Yeah. They must have had more, either one very busy snake wrangler or a team of them, right? Or they didn't give a fuck.
Well, I would be more inclined to number 3, where they was like, oh, it's good to put them in that tank over there, put them in a box.
Because even if they're not poisonous, they bite, right? Snakes bite. If you're rolling around in a bunch of snakes, I'm not quite sure, unless they've all been defanged, but that's a lot of, like you said, Ron, it's a lot of work to go to, unless there's like a wholesale defanged snakes ready to buy emporium in Taipei or something. But they do go to as well. They go to a proper store. Right? They go to one of those. There's loads of them in Taipei. The places where you can drink blood from a snake's gallbladder, and he strips the snake alive. As if there wasn't enough cruelty to snakes. They go and they, But this guy obviously does that a dozen times a day, right? That show or whatever. But yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, we'll talk about the other things, whether this film's any good or not. But just that's the one thing I think that strikes anyone who's ever seen this film. Just the first, it's just fucking hell. How many snakes are in this? Like, it's overwhelming. I've never seen so many. There's more snakes than in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? There's like
or snakes on a plane.
Yeah, I don't think there's any snakes in that. No.
No, yeah, but I was surprised that like snakes didn't become like a endangered species after this movie. Like, so,
yeah. I mean, maybe there are, because obviously, over here in Britain anyway, people don't eat snakes. However, it's conceivable that there are farms that produce snakes for food and medicinal purposes in Taiwan. You two will tell me a lot more about, the eastern region of the world and, things that are different from here.
Snakes aren't a delicacy here in Japan, I don't think.
No.
Not even in the provinces. There's other things that you wouldn't consider snakes. Like when I went to Cambodia, for example, I visited a crocodile farm, and that's what they feed the crocodiles. And that's the only other time, apart from watching Calamity of Snakes, have I seen so many snakes. And in answer to your question, where do you get snakes from? In the case of that crocodile farm, and they had literally like mountains of snakes baby snakes that they would pick up and chuck them into these cages with crocodiles. That was the way they would get them was they had like a pipe that went into the river with a tap on it, and they just open the tap and wait with a bucket, and snakes would just come out, siphoned out from the river. There's so many fucking snakes in the river. Amazed me. I had no idea. So I guess there's more snakes out there than you might imagine. Yeah. So that's the only thing comparable thing I can think of I've ever seen in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So anyway, so what do you guys think of this movie? So tell me about your history with this movie.
Well, like I said, I heard about this, and then I turned up in one of the very first visits to a big the Tsutaya chain, which is kind of like the Blockbuster chain of Japan, except it still kind of barely exists. Our local one got shut down earlier this year, and there used to be a huge one in Shinjuku. And what was great about it was they really looked after their videotape. So even when I went there in like 1999, they still had their VHS like dating back to the early 80s. So they had a huge stock. So they had Calamity of Snakes, and I'd heard about it, I read that. And to my delight, it was English dubbed as well, so I could actually enjoy it and know what was happening. So that was the first time I saw Calamity of Snakes. Darren?
And you, Darren?
Yeah. I don't know where I heard of it. I think, again, probably somewhere like Mondo Macabro would have been where I heard of it. And then, you know, our London contraband film supplier would have had a copy, and I would have known what it was, stuck it on. Fuck me, that's mental. So many snakes in this. They all die. That's a bit fucking cruel. Also, there's some weird kung fu shenanigans in the middle, which was a nice little blend of worlds for me.
A man called Tony in a big coat would have sidled up to you in an alley and gone, I got some Calamity of Snakes.
Yeah.
Want to see a snake?
Yeah. Little boy. Unzipping sounds.
Yes, you watched this film with Jimmy Savile, didn't you, Dad, for the first time?
What?
What?
Are you trying to get me to do my Jimmy Savile impression?
Heaven forbid.
Oh.
There we go. So
early in the morning for Jimmy Savile for me.
Right, it's never a good time for Jimmy Savile. So what did you make of this film, Ron? What did you enjoy Calamity of Snakes?
Did I enjoy it? I enjoyed parts of it. I thought it started out. Speaking of I think just off the bat to talk about the animal cruelty in this one versus Cannibal Holocaust. I watched this one first, and so it may have desensitized me a little bit when I watched Cannibal Holocaust. So, because it's just so like it's continuous. It's just over. It's just like, let's just see how many snakes we can kill in 90 minutes. You know, like it's at first.
Like someone had a bet.
Yeah. I mean, at first it was quite amusing, and I liked kind of the tone of it was kind of fun. It had very kind of like the humor is kind of almost like Taiwan kung fu movie kind of stuff, and they had that kind of kung fu in a bit in the middle. And then I'll be honest, it got a little old after a while. It gets kind of very repetitive. It's just the same. It's like, oh, and now the snakes are coming, and they kill them, and okay, there's someone else. The snakes coming, they kill them. It's just like, okay, and then so it got a little bit like I started to lose focus a little bit, like closer to the last bottom third, I think.
Snaked out.
Yeah, I got snaked out a little bit, and then it was a little bit. It was a little bit overwhelmed with snakes, I think, and then it got to like just the very, very final scene, which was, I certainly didn't expect that as how it was going to end. So it ends with the fire department all show up in their like space suits for some reason. Is that an actual fire department uniform in Taiwan? Do they really wear like space suits, like silver space suits like that? It was very.
Let's give the film the benefit of the doubt and say yes. Let's be nice.
Okay. Okay, sure. I mean, they go and they're fighting all the snakes. There's like carnage this way and that way, and then there's one. I guess it's the boa constrictor that just goes on fire, and then just wraps up. I don't even know who was it at the end that he was wrapped up on.
It's the developer.
Yeah.
The main guy. Okay, so I thought it must have been, but I couldn't really tell. And then they just wrapped him up, and then he's just on fire, wrapped up by the snake on fire. The end. That's a credits roll. So it was like, oh, okay, sure, yeah. So I mean, it had moments of kind of amusement and stuff, and interesting, and definitely Yeah, it's interesting that the animal cruelty is less. It stands out less. It's less hard hitting than it is in Cannibal Holocaust, because I guess people don't really like snakes in general. I guess I mean, yeah, and I don't have a particularly strong feeling towards snakes one way or the other. I'm not afraid of snakes, nor do I love snakes. So it was not quite like, I wasn't like, oh my God, those snakes, but it was really like oh wow, they're just really going to town and killing lots of snakes, right? So yeah. So
I'm not scared of snakes either, but I think I would be scared of being covered in snakes. Some of these.
I think and yes, I would say that the other thing that really stood out for me was the fact, like, where do they find all of these actors? And not even just like a couple, but like there's like dozens of actors, and they're all just willing to be covered in snakes. I was like, good for them. I mean, that's amazing that they were able to find this many people that were, and then a lot of them were decent actors too. They were just like, ah! And I don't know how much of it was acting, how much was really like screaming because I'm covered with snakes.
I'd like to see Tom Cruise,
especially the ones where they had to play dead, where they were supposed to be already killed by the snake and had to lay completely, hold their breath and lay completely still while the snakes are still crawling over you. That's hard. Like kudos to those actors, right? So
yeah. And let's not forget the scene where we're introduced to I don't know what he was in the plot. I always seem to call him the snake priest when I think of him, but I don't think he was a priest. He was just like a snake wrangler, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think he was just really good with snakes.
Yeah. But remember how he's introduced.
Yes,
he's in this. It's like a magic trick. It's like a stage magic trick. He's in this big, colourful box, and then sticks, and then the box falls away or disappears for some reason, and it's just a square of snakes all around.
Yeah,
and then he starts fighting the snakes.
The thing is with that as well, I was expecting, because it's in slow motion as well, so you're like, holy fuck, I was expecting then cut to he's on stage and the people applaud, and then the guy who's going to meet him goes, oh, hey, this is our snake wrangler who is also a magician or whatever the fuck. But no context. Why is he sitting in a box full of snakes? I don't know.
No. And then
that's where he meditates. He meditates in the snakes, yeah.
And then he gets this snake to bite his tongue at the same time, and there's all sorts. But yeah, and funny enough, I misremembered the end of this film, because I thought, and the best bit in the film for me, apart from like the elevator scene, is pretty good, where the elevator
and
it's like The Shining, isn't it? It's like that scene in The Shining.
Snakes.
Yeah, exactly.
The doors open and then it's just like a wall of snakes come in, right? That one.
I thought the finale of this film, from my memory from 20-ish years ago, I thought the finale of this film was the fight that the snake wrangler has with the boa in the warehouse. I thought that was the climax of the film.
Actually, sorry to cut you off, Darren. I actually had that thought when I was watching. I was like, this feels like a climax scene. Like I couldn't understand why it was like, this is still only like halfway through the film. It was like, or it was like in the first third even. Like I was like, this feels like this should be the ending. This is like the killing the big snake, right? So it was a little bit of a like. I actually stood out to me.
Yeah, and it is one of the best scenes in the film, and I do love that scene.
Yeah, and just to go back as well, just to the elevator full of snakes, just in case some people are thinking this is a kind of shoddily kind of put together thing, right? The thing is, there's no, as far as I can tell from watching that scene, there's no way around doing an elevator full of snakes opening and falling out on a wall, unless you fill an elevator full of snakes and open the door and a wall of snakes falls on people. Like, they just did it, right? It's insane. It's insane. I don't even know how you fill an elevator full of. Do you open the top up and pour them?
Yeah, probably from the top. I would guess that they'd have to go from the top, open the door, and then just drop them in from the top or something.
Because these snakes kind of, as well, they seem to be able. It's obviously someone off screen throwing them, but they're like
a lot of them are like snakes. Someone with a box going like this, right?
Yeah.
Like jumping snakes.
So no, go on, Darren.
I was going to say, and there are some effective scenes in this, although it's kind of low rent, and although it's it's pretty exploitative, it's pretty cynical production.
Yeah.
There are some lovely little moments in it, particularly with the soundtrack to this film as well. The soundtrack to this film pretty effective as well. When you've got the kind of just the footage of the snakes kind of going through the hotel, you know, unbeknownst to the partygoers. You've got these, and I don't know if it's sped up slightly and a little bit undercranked, but you've got these kind of quick moving snakes and they're climbing up the walls and all that stuff.
No, it's some good set pieces, right? It's not
pretty but it's pretty atmospheric bits around even the set pieces. You know?
They took their time to make it properly in a way, because otherwise it's not going to work, right? This stuff doesn't put itself together. And yes, of that scene as well, just in case you didn't have enough cruelty to snakes, that's when the fire brigade come in and use flamethrowers on the snakes. That's the snakes burnt alive as well. You know, just in case
there's a really effective shot, I think, from when they're in the hallway with all the snakes, and there's like that wave of white stuff that's coming, and I'm not even sure it looked like a fog, but it might have been like a foam or something, or like the it's coming towards the camera kind of thing. It was really.
I think it's supposed to be some kind of whatever you would like an insecticide or whatever, a reptilicide or something like that.
Yeah, or I thought maybe it was from the fireman hoses, just water, or like a foam, like an extinguisher foam or something. I don't know. Right, so.
Yes, so I agree with you, Ron. In a way, it is. I can see why you would think it's repetitive, but for me, that repetition in a way was just like you said. It worked more in just like a cumulative, overwhelming sense, and it's a fast-paced film. Like it hits the ground running. Right? There's no real bore. I can see why you overall might have snake fatigue, but there's no like boring talky bits, right? Like everything's bum 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 bum. I think we can all agree, though, the least not at all funny bit in the film is anything to do with that fat woman.
Yeah.
Like a comically fat woman who eats a lot. Haha, she's fat. That's it.
She's fat. Yeah. The fat shaming didn't really age well.
What I quite liked about this, and I made a note when I was making notes. I underlined this. I found this quite cute. So you've got the fat lady, and you've got her kind of scrawny husband.
Yes.
And her scrawny husband's always after other chicks.
Yes.
But at the end of the film, they're it's like they're back in love again before they've even seen any snakes. It's like they're back in love again, and they have this
feeding each other. Yeah.
And they're like feeding each other and all in love and stuff.
Right.
And I thought, oh, that's quite cute. I quite like that.
I guess.
And then they die horribly.
Yes. Also, another thing I thought was quite amusing was at the opening of the 17-story building that they've just built, it is referred to as the masterpiece of this century, which I thought was slight hyperbole for a block of flats.
Yeah.
And it's not a nice block of flats, though. It's full of marble, you know. It's a nice
full of snakes. The other thing as well, the thing that doesn't quite tie up, right, is the whole thing about the property developer, right? Oh, he's so evil, he's cutting costs. And now, I would understand if the building fell apart, or if it's like a Grenfell Tower thing, or, you know, it caught fire. But to be fair, I don't think it's anything to do with the cutting costs is why the snakes got in, right? I don't think they didn't install like anti-snake traps, or, you know, so that was a bit of a fudge, like the revenge. It's not his fault.
The build quality seems fine, doesn't it? You know,
yeah, it does.
The building itself doesn't seem, you know, doesn't seem like a Grenfell, does it?
No. Right. Okay. We're in the final 15 minutes here. So shall we race across to the third one?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll slither over 1986 Serpent Warriors. Now, neither of you had seen it before, is that right?
I think it was 85, wasn't it?
Be quiet, Ron.
You just got to say it's fine, and then he moves on.
Yeah, you haven't seen this either. Did you not have it before?
No.
Right. Okay.
I've never heard of it. I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, no, this is one of those little secrets. Yes, so basically there's a film from 86 called Serpent Warriors, which takes footage from Calamity of Snakes and has created a new film around it with new footage, right? And so the framing device for this one is in 1946, an island in the Pacific.
The Far East.
No,
no, it's the Pacific. Sorry.
Yes,
Carry on.
Island in
Sorry
the Pacific. And there's an expedition. Some bloke's gone out. His daughter has been kidnapped by a snake cult, I think, and they've hired some explorer to rescue her. And he's gone along with his son, but they don't rescue the girl. She gets killed, and then it turns out the son shoots one of the local cult members. So then he curses the little boy, and the little boy grows up to be the property developer from Calamity of Snakes. So the backstory is that he's been cursed since he was a child. So, and then we cut to Calamity of Snakes, and they find the pit of snakes, and they. But what they do this time is they also set fire to the snakes. There's new footage of someone setting fire to the snakes, right? And my guess is the reason they've done it because they superimpose the mashing of the snakes with the JCB with like a fire effect, right? Now, my guess is for this to play in North America, which I guess was the target audience for this re-edit, they thought, Americans are a little bit sensitive, and I don't think they want to see snakes smashed up. So I reckon this is just to disguise. Is that the way you read it? You two? Is that why you think they?
Yeah, that's what I got from it. Yeah,
because you can't really see the detail. And I noticed the rest of the film when footage from Calamity of Snakes does play out, it's never any of the close-ups of snakes being cut up and mashed up.
No,
none of that. So obviously, if you've seen the other film and you know about it, and you see, well, there's still people running and trampling on snakes and stuff, but. So if you've really thought about it, there's still snake cruelty happening. But I suppose for your average viewer, it would escape them. The animal cruelty element would escape them, right? So I'm guessing that's the idea behind this re-edit from the get-go, is to reuse this quite extraordinary footage, but make it more palatable for more sensitive types, I guess.
Or they put in English-speaking actors. I think maybe they were taking some of the point is that they were taking the footage and then making it into a new movie with white people. I think that was the idea, right?
Yeah. And then as an added kind of thing, they thought, we should probably take out the nastier bits, right? Because it's
right, yeah.
Play better. Yeah. So then he grows up, and then his wife. So this is the other thing as well. The actress Lo Toi Lan from Calamity of Snakes, who plays the property developer's wife who's having dreams and stuff. They've actually hired her again for this film, which I was kind of quite impressed by. They didn't just film someone else from behind who looked vaguely like her, or like Game of Death or something like that. They've actually hired the same actor, now credited as Kathleen Liu. And she goes over to Los Angeles because there's, I guess Clint Walker is an expert in snake cults. And Christopher Mitchum and Anne Lockhart work for him, and they decide to help her out by going out to the same snake cult is now in the deserts of Mexico. I suppose, I don't know why they moved there away from the island in the middle of the Pacific.
Budget,
there we go. And now, quite excitingly, they're led by Eartha Kitt, dressed in gold. And the woman, Kathleen Liu, is having, her dreams are now of dreams of Eartha Kitt, right? Her premonition of what will happen. Christopher Mitchum, Anne Lockhart, Clint Walker go to the snake cult and they say, "Oi, stop it." They don't. They chase them to the desert. There's a big firefight. And then cut to snakes attacking people in Taiwan again, right? Is that about it? And finally we go back after everyone's been killed by snakes. We go back and Eartha Kitt's got a snaky face.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah.
Right.
The most interesting thing for this, for me, which is much less entertaining than Calamity of Snakes. I would much rather watch Calamity. This was quite boring. The first time I watched it, I was I kind of got a kick out of it because I didn't know about it, and it was like, fucking hell, that's Calamity of Snakes, and I was excited to discover it. A second time, it's not very exciting a watch. But what I did as a nerd, what I appreciated about it was, because I'd never seen them back to back before. The first time I saw this has been years since I've seen Calamity of Snakes. There's footage from Calamity of Snakes in this film, not snaky, exciting stuff, like talking.
When they go to the temple.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's in Mandarin.
Yeah. And it's not in the other version.
No.
And originally, when he turns up to the snake pit at the beginning of the film as well, in the version, the English dubbed version of Calamity of Snakes, they just turn up to have a chat. Oh, there's a pit of snakes. But in this version, there's footage of a man who's already been killed. We never see in the original Calamity of Snakes. So I'm guessing the original Taiwanese cut of Calamity of Snakes is longer, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting that for their basis, they used another version, which was longer. But other than that nerdy little fact, this wasn't a huge, a lot of fun second time for me. How about you, lads?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I thought it was brilliant.
All right.
Because on the one hand, you've got the snaky action from Calamity of Snakes. Then you've got this, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the mood I watched it in. So you've got this kind of trio of scientists, of kick-ass scientists going on an adventure for no particular good reason. And, all of a sudden, instead of having, the weird kind of synthy soundtrack from Calamity of Snakes, all of a sudden you've got like hard rock music, like, guitar music, when you're having, fights with gunfights with the bikers in the desert. And you've got Eartha Kitt and the exotic snake dancers. And it just clipped along for me perfectly.
Well, it did, like I said, the first time for me it did as well, but that was just because of the discovery of all the weird elements. I would challenge you, Darren, to sit down and watch it again without an element of surprise.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna do that because I know how it'll go.
And I think there's a certain amount of nostalgia as well. There's something about where they filmed it in those deserts outside of Los Angeles. It seems like a place I've seen in millions of episodic 80s TV shows. Like they probably went there in The Fall Guy at some point. They went
on Knight Rider or
It just looked like a place even though I've never been there in my life. I grew up there via television in the 80s. There's something about that landscape which is familiar. How did you get on with this film, Ron?
I agree with you, Clive. I was pretty bored by it. I was I especially I didn't know what I was expecting. I just knew that you'd said watch Calamity of Snakes first and then watch this one. I was like, okay. And then I watch it and right away it's like the same footage. And I was like, fucking hell, Clive, you're making me watch this movie again. Because as I said,
it's done.
I was like, because as I said, I was a little bit snaked out at that point. I think I watched it like right into the next one, right? So I think if I had maybe left like a day or two between them, I may have been able to appreciate it more. But I think I was just like, okay, I finished the snakes. Okay, let's watch what's never next. And I was like, fucking hell, you're kidding me. It's the same movie. So I think that it sort of automatically put me off. And I was like, fuck. And then I realized it was, there's a lot of other new stuff, but like all that stuff that was like in the desert with them, like shooting and hiding. It was, I thought it was so boring. It was so long. And it's like, I was like, come on, move it along, guys. Right. So, yeah.
I agree with you. The desert scenes were too long.
It was really, the pacing was really down. Yeah. So
I think the difference as well, certainly between me and you here, even though you're a nerd in your own way in the things that you were interested in, when it comes to this kind of minutiae of slightly different versions of dodgy old films, you're a rational person, so you don't care too much about it. Whereas I'm who's like, how exciting, a different version of Calamity of Snakes. So
no, I think that if I had seen Calamity of Snakes as a teenager, or as like a, you know, in my formative years when I was in that, and then discovered this movie on my own, I may have had a different reaction to it. Right. Because sort of like, it's like, oh, hey, I remember that. Hey, that's from the, which I think is what you came from, right?
Yes.
Right. But I was more approaching it like, okay, I just finished like an hour and a half of Snakes. I'm a little snaked out. Let's watch this one. Oh, fuck, it's this, not even just more Snakes. It's the same fucking movie. And I was like, fuck you, Clive. I think that was what I was going for. Like, I was like, Clive's doing it again. Yeah, so I think that's what it was.
Ron has that feeling a lot. Fuck you, Clive. The only interesting credit here as well, I just wanted to mention briefly, was one of the two credited directors, John Howard. I was looking him up. He seems to have been the guy. I don't know if you remember these. I didn't see them back in the day, but something I learned about in more recent times is in the mid 80s, there was this slew of really like about an hour-long direct-to-video non-pornographic porn films, in so much as they weren't softcore porn films. They were like, they played like adult films, except they didn't have any adult content. And they were usually like starlets of the time, like being tied up, like Linnea Quigley was in some of them, and some other like Michelle Bauer and stuff, and they were like in ball gags and ropes, and there was like one called Kidnapped Girls Agency, and there's a few of these. I think this John Howard guy was one of the people responsible for making those. And apart from that, though, that was the only kind of production credit that jumped out at me as having an interesting link to anything else. Yeah, so for my money, if your time is precious, stick with Calamity of Snakes.
But if you stick with Calamity of Snakes, you don't get to see Eartha Kitt preside over the snake cult, right? Which has my favorite character in the whole film in.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not the blonde priestess with a knife and later the Uzi.
Yeah.
It's the man in the rock.
Oh, yes.
That hands out the snakes.
Yes.
So there's this scene where when you're introduced to the snake cult, you have these kind of, you know, very studio bound kind of cave scene where you've got Eartha Kitt presiding over basically a lot of bad exotic dancing with your clothes on. And each in turn, all of the snake cult, apart from Eartha Kitt, each in turn in the snake cult have to go to this rock. And in the rock, there's, well, you don't see him, you just see his hands. A man's hand comes out of a hole in the rock and hands people a snake.
It's the snake tuck shop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just love those little scenes. It just reminds me of like an Al Adamson film.
Right.
You know, where at any moment, you know, literally any weird shit can happen.
Right. Yeah. No,
for no good reason.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I don't know, I just really liked it. I kind of like this trio. I like this trio of scientists. I liked, you know, Eartha Kitt doing Eartha Kitt. And I don't know, it's just, there's something kind of dreamlike. And
if you're a long-time fan of Calamity of Snakes, I would say this is a different way to enjoy it. But as Ron said, maybe leave a gap. And I know Ron has to leave us now. I think we're just cutting it just fine here, right? So I think that has been Darren Jones there. Ron.
But before we finish, one more thing. Darren, didn't you say there was a fourth one?
Yes.
Oh yeah. What was that then?
Now, I only came across the reference to this really, really late last night, and I literally went to bed as soon as I'd found out about it. So I had no chance to do any research. But apparently, it's either Serpent Warriors that has been re-edited yet again, or it's the Korean, what they did in Korea with Calamity of Snakes.
Oh, okay.
Re-edited in the 90s.
Right.
With new CGI snakes.
Oh, this
and
sounds
apparently
fascinating.
the CGI is fucking awful.
This has just gone to the top of my must-see list.
And were it not for the fact that I literally heard about this last night at about 11 p.m, and I had to get up at 5 a.m. to do this, I would have found it and watched it.
Right. Well, watch this space. There might be a sequel to this episode. But until then, this has been Darren Jones, Ron Scott, and me, Clive Davis, as we suck on our corn cob pipes and wonder who the real cannibals are.